The old library smelled of dust and forgotten dreams, a scent Alara knew well. Sunlight, thick with motes, slanted through the tall windows, illuminating the pages of the worn book in her hands. Albert Camus, his words stark and unsettling, always resonated. There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. She paused, tracing the faded ink. He didn't mean death, not the physical act. He meant the surrender of the spirit, the giving up on the inherent, unasked-for burden of existence in a world that offers no prepackaged meaning. Alara thought of her great aunt, a woman named Beatrice. Beatrice had been a concert pianist. Her life, a symphony of practice, performance, and passionate pursuit of perfection. Then, at 60, arthritis stole the dexterity from her fingers. She didn't rage, didn't cry. She simply stopped playing. She didn't die. Not then. Died within her. She spent her remaining years in quiet solitude, tending a small garden, her eyes holding a distant, almost vacant look. Was that a form of suicide in Camus' sense? It's not a chosen end, but a quiet, almost imperceptible withdrawal from the very thing that had given her life its vibrant meaning. She had perhaps decided that life without the music was no longer worth living, and simply continued to exist, a shadow of her former self. It was a slow, internal fading, a surrender to the absurd indifference of a body that betrayed its purpose. The silence that filled Beatrice's days was heavier than any lament. It was the sound of a spirit slowly receding, a quiet acceptance of a diminished reality. Lara remembered visiting her, the air in the small cottage thick with unspoken resignation. Beatrice would point to a blooming rose, a faint smile touching her lips. But the light in her eyes, the spark that once ignited when her fingers danced across the ivory keys, was gone. It wasn't a dramatic exit from life, but a gradual retreat into its margins. This quiet cessation, Alara mused, felt closer to Camus' deeper inquiry than any headline-grabbing tragedy. It was the internal verdict, the soul's quiet withdrawal. Then, there was Michael, a former colleague from her university days. Michael had been a brilliant young historian, full of radical ideas, eager to challenge established narratives. He published a groundbreaking paper, but it was met with fierce academic resistance, even ridicule. He fought for a while, argued, passionately, but the system, entrenched and unyielding, slowly wore him down. He didn't leave academia. Instead, he started teaching introductory courses. Repeating the same facts year after year, his lectures devoid of the fire that once burned within him. He published safe, unremarkable articles. He was still alive, still working, but the intellectual curiosity, the rebellious spirit that defined him, had withered. He had, in a way, committed a philosophical suicide, choosing the comfortable path of conformity over the exhausting struggle of intellectual rebellion. He had answered Camus' question by deciding, perhaps unconsciously, that the fight wasn't worth the living. Alara recalled a conversation with him years later at a faculty gathering. His eyes, once bright with intellectual fervor, held a weary resignation. He spoke of the need for pragmatism for navigating the realities of the academic landscape. The passion was gone, replaced by a quiet acceptance of the status quo. It wasn't a physical death, but the death of a certain kind of striving, a surrender to the perceived futility of genuine intellectual pursuit within a rigid system. This internal capitulation, Alara thought, was another facet of Camus' profound question. Camus, Alara knew, proposed the revolt. Not a violent uprising, but a conscious, lucid defiance against the universe's silence. It was the act of embracing the absurd, of acknowledging that life has no inherent meaning, yet choosing to live it fully, passionately, and with integrity. Like Sisyphus, forever pushing his boulder uphill, finding his triumph in the very act of pushing, in the conscious scorn of his fate. This daily act of choosing to engage, despite the lack of ultimate purpose, was the essence of Camus' answer. It was not about finding meaning, but about creating it through our actions and our awareness. She thought of a documentary she'd seen about a street artist in Berlin, a woman who painted vibrant, ephemeral murals on crumbling walls. Her work was often painted over within days, sometimes hours. Yet she returned, day after day, brush in hand, creating beauty that was destined to disappear. Wasn't seeking immortality or fame. She painted because she had to, because the act of creation itself was her defiance. Her art was her revolt against the impermanence of all things, her affirmation of life's fleeting beauty. She answered the question by asserting that the act of living, of creating, was its own justification, regardless of outcome. The vibrant colors against the gray concrete, the temporary nature of her art, became a powerful metaphor for embracing the present, for finding joy in the act itself, without the need for lasting significance. And then there was the story of Dr. Eleanor Vance, palliative care physician Alara had read about. Dr. Vance spent her career working with the dying, witnessing profound suffering, and the ultimate end of all human endeavor could have led to utter despair. Yet she spoke of finding immense meaning in the small acts of comfort, the moments of connection, the dignity she helped her patients maintain. She didn't try to impose grand meaning on death. Instead, she embraced the fragility of life and found purpose in alleviating suffering, in being present. Her work was a daily act of defiance against the overwhelming finality, a profound yes to life, even in its last moments. She chose to live meaningfully within the absurd reality of human mortality, finding her answer in compassion. Her focus wasn't on avoiding death, but on enriching the life that remained. However brief, Ilara closed the book, the scent of old paper clinging to her fingers. The question wasn't about whether to jump from a bridge or swallow pills. It was about the daily quiet choices. Do you let the indifference of the world extinguish your spark? Do you seek refuge in comforting lies, denying the vast silent void? Or do you, like the artist, the doctor, the resilient spirit, choose to live with open eyes, to create, to connect, to love, to find joy in the fleeting moments, knowing they will pass? For Alara, studying history, she saw the rise and fall of civilizations, the grand narratives that ultimately dissolved into dust. It could be disheartening. But in understanding the human struggle, the persistent drive to build, to dream, to overcome, she found her own form of revolt. Each story she unearthed, each life she brought back into focus, was an affirmation. It was a conscious choice to engage with the human condition, to find meaning not in some cosmic decree, but in the shared, messy, beautiful, and utterly absurd journey of being alive. The question, she realized, was never truly answered, but rather lived, moment by moment, in the unwavering choice to continue. I hope these two parts work for your voice generation. Let me know if you need any adjustments.